My sister, who has a history of mental instability, attempted to disrupt my wedding by claiming that my children were illegitimate because I had given birth to them before marriage. She then proceeded to act in a manner that was so erratic that the police were called to intervene. Consequently, I was forced to marry my spouse approximately 1 week ago. Unfortunately, the wedding ceremony was marred by unfortunate circumstances. To provide context, I have an older sister. Let us refer to her as Stacy, aged 26. Our relationship has always been characterized by intense sibling rivalry. We have a long-standing animosity towards each other, stemming from a desire to outdo one another. Our relationship deteriorated further as we grew older, and we continued to harbor negative feelings towards each other. We ensured that our interactions with others remained cordial, as we were keen to conceal our true feelings. Despite our outwardly cordial demeanor, we harbored a profound dislike for each other. When we resided together, we maintained a formal silence, and our interactions with our family members were perfunctory. Our parents were aware of our animosity, yet they never attempted to reconcile us. The aforementioned circumstances ultimately contributed to a series of unfortunate events. However, a detailed account of these events will be provided at a later point in time. Stacy relocated to pursue higher education at the age of 18, which was a source of immense relief for me. This transition allowed me the opportunity to express myself freely within the household, rather than constantly navigating around her expectations. She would only return for the holidays, boasting of her success at one of the state's most prestigious business schools. I admit that I was somewhat envious of her, but my primary objective was to work harder than her and gain admission to a more prestigious institution than her own. I was ultimately successful in achieving this goal, as I was accepted into an Ivy League school. Which was a significant setback for her. I was celebrated in a more prominent manner than she ever was. I had assumed that my acceptance would mark the end of our competition, but that did not occur. Instead, she announced that she was starting her own business. With the assistance of my father, she successfully established her enterprise. It is uncertain whether her success was due to chance or to her own efforts. Over the course of a few years, her business expanded, and she relocated to Japan to develop its technological aspects. This venture was a resounding success, and her parents were proud of her achievements. This occurred approximately 2 years ago. Since then, after graduating from college, I relocated to Japan, where I encountered difficulties in my professional endeavors. The success of my sister, Stacy, in her endeavors further compounded my difficulties. I had secured employment, but it was not as fulfilling as the work she was doing. I soon resigned from this position. This proved to be a significant misstep, as I subsequently learned. I should have remained in that position and worked my way up, but I was acting foolishly by competing with my sister. In fact, I should have focused on myself and my career. It was a misguided decision, and I regret it. However, I have since rectified the situation. I resigned from my position at the company. I was in a state of prolonged anticipation, waiting for an opportunity to present itself, but when it did not materialize, I experienced a profound sense of despondency. Furthermore, Stacy was flourishing in her own field and her business was a source of immense pride for my parents, who frequently lauded her achievements. I resented her success, yet I was unable to express my feelings. I was unable to express my true feelings, as I felt compelled to conceal my envy and resentment. I was required to feign contentment whenever I encountered my family, as any display of negative emotion was deemed unacceptable. This period coincided with my meeting Jackson, my husband, 25 months ago. I am immensely grateful for this meeting. I did so because meeting him had a profound impact on my life. It had been approximately 6 months since I had resigned from my position and was awaiting the emergence of a more promising opportunity. However, despite my best efforts, such an opportunity did not materialize. Consequently, I was experiencing a significant degree of depression and frustration with my circumstances. In an attempt to address these challenges, I downloaded a dating application. I was seeking any form of interaction, as I felt that using the app would serve as a distraction from the difficulties I was experiencing. I was struggling to cover rent and even basic necessities for myself. I had to rely on my parents for financial assistance, which they provided on a monthly basis. Additionally, I had set aside a certain amount of money from my previous employment, but it was insufficient to cover my expenses. I was experiencing significant financial difficulties, and my parents were assisting me. I would promise them that I would repay the money as soon as I was able. However, I could always hear the disappointment in their voices. My voice was filled with a sense of frustration and self-loathing. I was acutely aware that I was not performing to the best of my abilities, and it was challenging for me to accept that at that moment, Stacy was thriving while I was struggling. I was a significant source of disappointment to my parents, and I turned to dating apps and random dates as a means of distraction. I did not enjoy these interactions. I employed various methods to distract myself from my feelings. For a period of time, this approach proved effective. I engaged in several dates with a partner who was primarily interested in casual encounters. However, this dynamic shifted after I initiated contact with Jackson. He was an intriguing conversationalist, and he aligned with my expectations. He had also been a straight-A student during his academic career, but after graduating from high school, he enrolled in culinary school and was employed in a restaurant. 2 years prior to our meeting, he was engaging, charismatic, and exhibited the ideal balance of masculinity. At the time, I informed him that I was not seeking a long-term romantic partner. When he proposed a date after approximately 2 weeks of online communication, he informed me that he was seeking a serious relationship and was not interested in a casual partnership. He was dating another woman at the time. I found his candor and forthrightness admirable. I thus decided to proceed with the date, without any clear idea of what might transpire. I agreed to a first date with him, simply to ascertain the nature of our interaction. The date proceeded extremely well, as though we had known each other for years. It was, in fact, the best date I had ever had. We engaged in a great deal of conversation. The experience was enjoyable, and I felt that I was not attempting to prove anything to him, which was a novel sensation. It was a refreshing change from my usual interactions with others. The conversation was straightforward and easygoing, and we immediately connected. I am uncertain as to what precipitated this shift in dynamics, but I decided to pursue a deeper connection with him. We proceeded to engage in a few additional dates, but after a mere 3 months of our relationship, I discovered that I was pregnant. At the time, my primary concern was how Jackson would react to this development. I was not overly concerned about other aspects of the situation, as he had already gained a comprehensive understanding of my life and background within the initial weeks of our relationship. I had openly shared all aspects of my life with him, including my experiences competing with my sister and striving to outdo her. However, being with him motivated me to become a better person, a more independent individual. He already possessed this knowledge. I consider myself to have been well informed about him by that point. In fact, he had encouraged me to overcome my depressive phase and actively seek employment, rather than merely awaiting opportunities to arise. Consequently, I resumed my previous role at the company I had previously resigned from. I believe this was the case. It was one of the most pivotal decisions I had ever made. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was not overly concerned, as I had been working for almost a month and my relationship with Jackson was also progressing well. The only concern I had was how he would react to the news, as most people would. Some individuals may choose to terminate the relationship due to concerns about the timing of the pregnancy. However, I was motivated to proceed with the pregnancy because I felt a strong desire to become a mother. I was surprised by Jackson's initial reaction, which was one of support and understanding. He expressed his support, stating that it was my body and that I could make the decision I deemed appropriate. He assured me that he would be there for me, regardless of my choice. When I informed him of my intention to continue the pregnancy, he was elated. He had actually hoped for this outcome, as he felt a strong connection to the child. He was also prepared, despite his relative youth and the fact that they had only been together for 3 months. He informed me that he did not wish to appear irrational or overly assertive, which is why he had deferred to my decision. However, I was pleased to discover that my choice had made him the happiest man alive. We agreed that, despite the forthcoming birth, we would wait to get to know each other better. Prior to marriage, we agreed to engage in a period of mutual improvement. This was followed by the discovery that we were expecting twins, which constituted another significant surprise. We proceeded to adjust to this new reality. He relocated to my residence shortly after the pregnancy was confirmed, and he introduced me to his parents. His parents were similarly accommodating, demonstrating a genuine fondness for all the children without ever pressuring them to compete. It was the first time I had observed such a dynamic, as I had never experienced it firsthand. However, I was somewhat apprehensive about introducing him to my family, as I was aware that my parents would not necessarily approve of my life decisions. Despite being a bright student with a promising future, I had made the decision to have children with a man I had barely known for less than a year and had even moved in with him. My parents would likely disapprove of this, so I postponed the matter until I began to show. At that point, I recognized that concealment was no longer possible. I arranged a meeting with them at 4 months gestation and informed them of the situation. I invited them to my residence. I had Jackson present to provide moral support. My parents were aware that I had been dating Jackson for some time, but they were unaware that I had been residing with him and that I was also going to be the mother of his children in the near future. When I informed them of this, I anticipated that they would be angry and express their displeasure in some way. However, they reacted in a manner that was unexpected and positive. In a rather unexpected manner, they seemed genuinely pleased for me. They expressed their joy and congratulated me on the pregnancy. When I informed them that I was expecting not 1, but 2 babies, my mother nearly fainted from happiness. While this was an unexpected reaction, I was pleased that they were not angry or upset. Indeed, my parents expressed their displeasure at the news. However, after learning of my decision, they threw me a party and informed their acquaintances that they were soon to become grandparents. I had also informed them that Jackson and I did not intend to marry solely for the purpose of having children together. Instead, we desired to reside together for a period of time before taking that step. They were willing to make such a significant commitment, and they were supportive of my decision. I was initially taken aback, but I was pleased to find that they were genuinely encouraging. I was grateful that my parents were on my side during this process because I would have been disheartened if they had opposed me or attempted to influence my decisions. I even discussed with them the extent of their support and the fact that I had not anticipated such a response from them. They informed me that throughout our childhood, they had not been particularly effective parents in the sense that they had not prevented my sister and me from competing with each other. They believed that they were doing us a favor by constantly pushing us to do better, but they came to realize that this approach might have had negative consequences in the long run. This realization occurred when they learned that I had quit my job because I wanted to do something better. They were aware that I had made the decision to pursue a more fulfilling career path due to the success of Stacy's venture. This prompted my own desire to establish a venture of my own, with the aim of surpassing Stacy's achievements. It was curious that they were aware of this, despite my lack of disclosure on the matter. However, they asserted that, as parents, they were aware of the situation and felt a sense of responsibility towards it. Consequently, they sought to convey that they would provide unwavering support regardless of circumstances. They emphasized that there was no need for me to engage in constant competition with Stacy to prove my worthiness of their love and affection. They reassured me that their love for me was unconditional and equal. My parents expressed pride in both of us, emphasizing that our consistent efforts were of paramount importance to them. This dialogue proved invaluable, as it facilitated open communication and mutual understanding. I am grateful for this opportunity to discuss challenges and concerns with my parents, as it provided invaluable support during my pregnancy and beyond. While Jackson and I were working, my parents asked me to take the children out. They informed me that they had previously engaged in a similar discussion with Stacy, but the outcome was not as favorable as they had anticipated. Stacy responded with laughter and asserted that she did not require such affirmations because she genuinely believed them to be true. I was experiencing a sense of defeat, which precipitated a psychological crisis. My parents attempted to mitigate the situation by conveying their equal pride in both of us. However, she was aware of the truth but unwilling to acknowledge the efforts of our parents to embrace a new way of life and improve their circumstances. My parents were convinced that Stacy was more worthy of their love because she was doing better in life by her standards. They informed me that they would speak with her when she returned for the holidays because online communication was not as effective. They promised me that they would speak with Stacy and have the same conversation that they had with me was to be repeated with her, so that she would also cease competing with me. Up until that point, she had been going above and beyond, attempting to make me feel bad. Since I had announced the news of my pregnancy, she had been sending me backhanded compliments and making straight remarks that were completely uncalled for in the family group chat. These were intended to put me down and make me feel bad about the pregnancy. However, I did not think there was any reason for me to feel bad about it. To her, it was obviously a failure and a huge one at that, because I was pregnant before marriage and I was residing with a male acquaintance with whom I had only recently formed a relationship. This individual had a profound impact on me, and I perceived that I could now express my thoughts and feelings freely. However, this perception was not shared by my partner, who believed that I was becoming increasingly distant and unresponsive. On several occasions, I considered leaving the group chat, but my parents encouraged me to remain. They expressed their desire to support me and emphasized the importance of maintaining communication with my partner. I remained in the group chat for the sake of my parents, who were attempting to improve their parenting skills and wanted us to remain united. My parents promised to address the situation or, at the very least, try their best. If they were unable to do so, I was free to leave the group. When Stacy returned for Christmas, my parents informed me that they would speak with her, and they did. However, it was too late. She had already made her intentions clear. Her sole objective was to humiliate me and make me feel small. She was unbearable that year, even though she had been somewhat annoying for the previous couple of years. This was due to her successful business, but that year was much worse because not only had she just returned from Japan, but she had also returned knowing that I was pregnant and not close to her in terms of success and wealth. She did not let go of even one opportunity to remind us of that. Throughout the duration of the event, she engaged in self-aggrandizing discourse and directed disparaging glances in my direction. She even inquired as to my emotional state, seemingly unaware of the discomfort she was causing. I ultimately departed the gathering prematurely, striving to maintain composure and avoid public displays of distress. At the party, my parents attempted to engage Stacy in conversation to dissuade her from continuing to engage in self-aggrandizing behavior. However, she asserted that she had invested significant effort to achieve her current position and would not allow me to diminish her achievements. Consequently, she intended to continue showcasing her accomplishments, and I was compelled to accept this decision. I terminated my relationship with her and subsequently withdrew from the group. My parents concurred with this decision, as they felt it was the optimal course of action. Despite the passage of 2 years without communication, I was unaware of her activities. However, I recently received information from 2 of my relatives indicating that she had returned from Japan with a child. I initially became aware of this development approximately 4 weeks ago. I was informed of this development approximately 4 weeks ago. The child, who was only 2 months old, was described as a miracle baby. My parents stated that they had engaged in several video calls with the individual in question before her return, yet they had not noticed any indications of her pregnancy. The individual expressed a desire to maintain secrecy regarding the pregnancy and stated that she had wanted to surprise everyone. She had recently become a mother and married her husband, the father of her children, in a private ceremony just a year ago. Now, she was finally ready to talk about it. The timing was suspicious because almost everyone in the family knew that I was supposed to get married around the same time. However, now, thanks to her, everyone could only talk about her marriage and her daughter. She said that her husband was still in Japan because he had a lot of work and could not make it. Nevertheless, she had come here with her daughter because she wanted her family to meet her. I could not allow something like such. Incidents are particularly distressing when one is engaged to be married, as the wedding is supposed to be a joyous occasion. Even after the individual in question returned, I continued to avoid her. Unfortunately, this avoidance proved futile, as she managed to inflict significant damage on my wedding. She arrived uninvited, just after the ceremony, which was a highly distressing experience. I am grateful that the incident occurred after the ceremony had concluded. The individual in question disrupted my wedding by crashing the event and appearing among the guests. I was visibly distressed, but Jackson and my parents helped me regain composure. It was revealed that the individual in question had gained access to the venue without my knowledge. If I had reacted in an aggressive manner, it would have placed me in a disadvantageous position. Furthermore, her presence on my wedding day could be perceived as a disruption to the ceremony, yet we could not anticipate the extent of her actions. As long as she did not engage in any overtly problematic behavior, we could allow her to remain at the event and address the situation at a later point. The venue for my wedding was Jackson's aunt's farmhouse, which had a relatively lax security protocol. This allowed her to gain access to the premises unimpeded, which ultimately led to her involvement in the incident. In retrospect, I regret not investing more resources in security. It would have been prudent to invest in enhanced security measures, as this would have enabled us to circumvent a number of issues that arose during her presence at the wedding. Her primary focus was on her perceived advantages as a result of her miracle baby, and her assertion that my children were illegitimate and therefore irrelevant. Prior to marriage, her remarks were perceived as highly insulting. She made these statements to numerous individuals at my wedding, and subsequently, those who interacted with her subsequently informed me of her comments. I chose to simply smile and ignore the situation, as I was reluctant to engage in a conflict with her and potentially disrupt the wedding celebrations. It was a challenging experience, but I managed to cope with it to some extent. At one point, I was on the verge of losing control, but before I could even utter a word, the police arrived on the scene. I was unaware of the situation, but they instructed us to seal the exits and then promptly locked us in. They had arrested Stacy, and the situation became even more chaotic. The situation was disorienting due to the presence of a woman who was screaming and crying while holding the infant, which was supposed to be my sister's. She claimed that the infant was hers. After that, the events became increasingly chaotic, with statements being made and individuals being handcuffed. It was not until much later that we learned that the infant was not, in fact, a baby. It subsequently emerged that all the images she had been displaying were sourced from a friend's social media account and that she had digitally inserted herself into them. This was a particularly disturbing revelation, given that she had been meeting us with the child on numerous occasions, claiming to be the child's babysitter. In fact, she had been residing with her friend since her return from Japan. She had terminated the lease on her own apartment and was seeking alternative accommodation, thus providing childcare services without remuneration. This was the reason why she had not extended invitations to our parents or relatives to visit her. She had only visited them on the day of my wedding. She then proceeded to take this relationship to an extreme by attending my wedding without her friend's consent. She had taken the baby. While her friend and her husband were asleep, she left the premises. She then refused to take any calls, which prompted her friends to involve the police and have her arrested. Fortunately, she had been talking incessantly about the wedding and how she wanted to take me down. This enabled her friends to guess where she would be and track her down. I was forced to have her arrested. It was a surreal experience. I am still struggling to come to terms with it. I had always assumed that Stacy was extremely competitive, but I had not considered that she would go to such extreme lengths to prove to our parents that she was better than us. The situation is of great concern. She is currently requesting that her friends refrain from pressing charges against her, as she is aware that she will not prevail in the legal proceedings. While no action has been taken thus far, she has taken the extraordinary step of attributing blame to me for the current circumstances. She has alleged that I was only marrying her to humiliate her. It is important to note that I have not communicated with her for approximately 2 years and have not spoken to her since our last interaction. I have not communicated with her for approximately 2 years and have not spoken with her since our last interaction. I was even magnanimous enough to allow her to attend my wedding, as I did not wish to create a scene and humiliate her. She is the individual who transformed my wedding into an unpleasant event. If anything, I should be the one held responsible. Yesterday, she contacted me and informed me I informed her that I wished she would be incarcerated, as she is unfit to reside in society. Alternatively, she should be committed to a psychiatric facility, as her actions are indicative of a mental illness. However, my parents believe that I should assist her and persuade her acquaintances that she was not acting rationally due to my alleged harassment. The news of my marriage and children has prompted the police to consider the possibility of not pressing charges against her, given that she had been residing with them and caring for the infant. However, the case remains complex, and the police have been unable to determine the best course of action without the consent of her friends. Without such consent, the police are unable to proceed. In the case of kidnapping, the situation would be different had she not been living with them and actively caring for their infant during their absence. However, that is not the case here, which is why she was able to evade being jailed. She has been claiming that they had already consented to her taking the infant with her, but there is no way to confirm this, so she is not currently in trouble. Our goal is to convince them of her innocence. I am uncertain as to whether I should pursue this course of action. I do not believe that she merits assistance from me, particularly given my own circumstances. However, my parents believe that it would be wrong for me to abandon her, even though she has wronged them. I have therefore decided to sever all ties with my family, including my parents. They were helpful during the pregnancy, but I no longer wish to maintain contact with them. After the birth, I have decided to sever all ties with my family, including my parents. I believe that I require a period of solitude and that their support is of secondary importance at this time. I simply wish to be with my husband and children, and I cannot do so if I am consumed by their conflicts. I have decided to withdraw from this situation because it is causing me significant distress. I am grateful for my parents and everything they have done for me. Following my announcement of pregnancy, I have reached a point where I am simply exhausted by the situation. With regard to Stacy, it is evident why I am reluctant to assist her. She has not demonstrated any inclination to accept help, and she has effectively placed herself in a position where she must rely on her own resources to resolve the matter. Jackson believes that this course of action is appropriate, and that is the end of the matter. I have recently received information from a few of my relatives indicating that Stacy is facing significant challenges. It has been reported that Stacy's friends have decided to press charges and pursue this matter further. Stacy has previously claimed that she had her friends' consent to take the baby with her whenever she pleased. However, this claim is likely to be difficult to prove in court, particularly given Stacy's behavior during the wedding and her previous claims about the child's paternity. This is a distressing situation, but I am not surprised. I am also currently avoiding contact with my parents, and I do not anticipate doing so until they acknowledge that my actions were misguided and express regret for asking me to assist Stacy. This is a significant request, but I am unwilling to speak with them until they recognize the extent of the damage they have caused to Stacy and me as children. It is important to recognize that this situation is largely the result of their actions. Stacy is currently on trial and the outcome is uncertain. If convicted, she could face up to 5 years in prison. However, her mental instability may result in a shorter sentence. Jackson and I are currently on our honeymoon and intend to reconcile once we return. Given the unfortunate circumstances surrounding the wedding, it is not feasible to request the assistance of my parents in childcare. Consequently, we must rely on Jackson's parents to supervise our children during our absence, which is expected to last for a limited duration of 2 weeks. It is my hope that the quality of our honeymoon experience will be more positive than that of the wedding. Based on the nature of the situation, it is likely that this will be the case, as it will be just the two of us, Jackson, and our children.